October 10th is World Mental Health Day. Now, there are so many things we could be talking about on World Mental Health Day, but none of them I can speak to as personally as depression. Some of you have heard my story. There is an episode I will link to where I shared about my bout with depression and how the Creative Women's League was born out of that. I'll touch on it a little bit today. I wanted to make this episode to reach out to anybody who's starting to feel a little lost in the weeds. But just because you don't think that you are suffering from depression doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to this episode. There were a lot of people in my life who saw the warning signs and didn't know what to do. Fortunately, in my case, I was able to come out of it. I was able to see the sun again, take a breath again. But not all of us are that lucky. So I hope you listen in today. This talks about my personal battle with depression, inspired by Amy Porterfield and Jasemine Star. I will link to that episode they did about their battles with depression as well. This needs to be out in the open. We need to talk about it more. Especially as creative women, we need to band together and love one another. Through the hard stuff, through the awkward stuff, we need to feel comfortable to look at one another and say, hey, are you doing okay? Because sometimes that's all it takes. You are listening to the Creative Women's League podcast. I'm your host and biggest fan, Kate Toney. Creative women entrepreneurs all over the globe turn to the Creative Women's League for social media advice, marketing help, and to get their minds in the mode to achieve bigger than they ever thought possible. Whether it's hearing the journey of your favorite creative badasses or the expert business advice shared, CWL is here for you with a whole lot of laughs, heaps of honesty, and endless support. Because over here, we know the secret sauce to building your creative empire all starts with motivation, inspiration, know-how, and community. If you want to exceed every goal, defeat the doubt, cast out fear, and connect with your fellow creative Wonder Woman, well, my dear, it's time to join the Creative Women's League. Good morning, everybody. How are you? It is a beautiful Wednesday, or, a beautiful whenever it is that you're listening to this. I just want to warn you that this episode is going to be a little unfiltered. And no, I don't mean my sailor mouth, though. I really could make a truck driver blush. I mean that I'm not going to do a whole ton of editing for this episode. I really don't want to. Mainly because I'm talking about something so personal. And I have to edit these episodes myself. I do it all myself as of right now. I'm a little worried that if I start to go back through and cut this audio up to make it sound more professional, to make it sound more perfect, to be honest with you, I might lose my nerve. I really might. Or I'll start editing out pieces that I didn't want to tell or decided maybe that sounds stupid. So, bear with me. I tend to a lot more when I'm talking about something personal. And I might lose the thread a couple times, but I promise it'll all come back. As you heard in the opener, this episode is for Mental Health Day. That is October 10th. At the time this podcast comes out, it will be a week until that day. There's lots of things we could talk about on World Mental Health Day. To be honest with you, there's a lot of things that I could talk about on World Mental Health Day. More talking about my experience with other people. A lot of addiction in my family. There's even things like bipolar. We've had a few eating disorders. A lot of things in my family where people have found other ways to cope with the things they're going through mentally. But I personally haven't been through any of those things. I have personally been through depression. It is weird to say even now. Sometimes I don't know if it's the inner mean girl or if it is, I was told my whole life I was really dramatic. So sometimes I think that these normal human emotions are just me being overly dramatic. But in the moments of clarity, when I am willing to call it what it is, it was depression. And it snuck up on me. The thing is about depression, about my depression, that's the other thing I do want to clarify. This is my bout with depression. So if you think somebody close to you needs help, they need someone to talk to, they might be depressed, worse, they might be suicidal, but they didn't exhibit the signs that I'm talking about today, that does not mean anything. This is how it manifested for me. And I like to speak to the way it manifested for me because I was caught up in the undertow before I ever realized what happened. So, that's the disclaimer on this episode, is reach out to anybody you think needs it. And if you yourself feel like something has been off, you can't quite put your finger on it, but it doesn't sound like what I'm going through, once again, go get help. Reach out to a family member or a friend who will understand. Reach out to me. I am here for you. You know I am your biggest fan. I am your cheerleader in all of this. So, that's my big disclaimer. Just because what you're going through doesn't sound like what I'm going through does not mean it's not depression. Does not mean you shouldn't go talk to somebody. Okay? Deal? The funny thing is I have always been the happy person. I've always been the plucky, happy-go-lucky. My mom and I kind of talk about it. Actually, sidebar, my mom was really nervous when I went to Scotland by myself. And I kind of had to sit her down and say, Mom, I am always good. I always make the best out of my scenario. I am always happy for a new adventure and always take on things with vigor and excitement. So, this gets a little heavy, but so Mom, if I were to die, I will be fine. Okay? I want you to know that. I will always be fine. Now I say this, I think that illustrates an even bigger point than I meant to. I was always fine. Always fine. I was the happy person. I took things on with vim and vigor. You guys have heard about my crazy exploits as I travel. I always end up with something weird happening. And I take it in stride. No problem. Being happy-go-lucky my whole life. Being ready to take on the world my whole life. I thought there was no way depression could come for me. No way. Even though I had witnessed depression in people I loved, people that were close to me, I thought there was no way it was going to happen to me. It just never even crossed my mind. So when about 2 years ago, we're approaching 2 years since this occurred, I was with an ex-boyfriend. I was living in a different part of town that I hated. I was living in a house that I hated. I was living with a roommate that I hated. My life had just taken a weird turn. I had kind of been a passenger in my life for a good 3 or 4 months. And that was when I started coming home from work and going right to bed. Now, I came home from work at some days 5 o'clock, some days 8 o'clock. I'd be home at 8 o'clock. I'd go straight to bed, and I would sleep until the next day at 9 a.m. when I would get up, make my oatmeal, and head out the door. The oatmeal is important. Depressed people don't get up and make breakfast. Hello. Depressed people get up and make breakfast. Just so you know. Depressed people do a lot of things, and your logic is unusual. Sometimes I would make dinner, and by the time I made dinner and ate dinner, my body was so exhausted that there was nothing I could do but go to bed. And I would just apologize to my then boyfriend and say, sorry, I left the dishes. I just was so tired. I think I said a lot at that time, I must be getting sick. And at one point I did. I got incredibly sick twice, back to back, actually. Like one of the sickest times I've ever been. The sickest I've ever been. There we go. It was so hard. Everything was so hard. We were living amongst boxes because I just wouldn't unpack in this new house we were in. I was living amongst chaos in the things that I did unpack because I didn't want to move my stuff into the closet or touch any of my sewing stuff. It was really a haze, and it's hard to get back into that frame of mind now. I didn't play with Alfred. I barely even looked at Alfred. As I say that, he walks into the room like, what? Hey, bud, I'm talking about when Mom used to sleep all the time. I can laugh about it now, mostly because that's how I get through things. But at the time, the overwhelming feeling was that I was drowning. I said that a lot at that time. I said it to my boyfriend, which is interesting. Not my current boyfriend, my then boyfriend. I'd say, I just feel like I'm drowning. And he'd be like, yeah. Okay. So I thought it was normal. It was just a phase I was going through. You know, work at that time was really hard. I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay there. I was having difficulties connecting to what I was doing, why I was doing it. You know, was really beating myself up all the time. You left the salon to start your own business. Now you're just miserable at another business. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I slept so much, is because when I was awake, I was being horrible to myself. Now, we do have to add on the fact that I was madly in love with Brad and not willing to admit it to myself or him or anyone. We had known each other at this time. We had connected and really liked each other. But anyway, there was just a perfect storm. So there's 1,000 things I could have blamed it on, right? 1,000 things. So probably the 8 millionth time, I looked at my then boyfriend and said, I think we were fighting over dishes, I believe, because I just kept not doing the dishes. If I had lived by myself, I would have had a sink piled high. I would have had laundry everywhere. I had to somewhat keep it together because I had somebody around. So I think I was apologizing for not doing the dishes. And he said, you never do the dishes anymore. I'm used to this by now, and I'm sick of it. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so tired all the time. And I just feel like I don't even know what to do with myself. I can't think of anything else to do but come home and sleep. And he said, yeah, Kate, that's how depression works. But if you're not going to get help for it, what can we do? And I felt like he punched me right in the face. I mean, he could have. It was the same feeling. I wasn't depressed. I was like, wait. I'm not depressed. I'm just going through some things. I'm not depressed. He's like, sleeping all the time. You haven't touched your sewing machine in months. You either eat everything in the house or nothing at all. You don't take care of your looks anymore, which is one of your favorite things to do. Get up and do your hair and makeup. He's like, Kate, you're depressed. I thought you knew. He had come from so much depression in his life that he figured I was going through a bout of depression. I would self-moderate that, and I would get through it. And I just sat there staring at him stunned. I'm not depressed. I am not depressed. I'm just going through some stuff. And that was kind of my mantra for a while. A good few weeks. It was hard. I walked into work one day and told one of my coworkers, I think I'm depressed. And her response was, well, yeah, honey. I'm sorry. I thought you understood and were dealing with it. Everybody assumed that because I had so much of my shit together, that I was so action oriented and took things head on, that I was working through this. Everybody. Except, of course, for my mom, who I hid it from. So I, on some level, was aware enough to know that my actions weren't normal. That I needed to hide that from my mom and let her know that everything's hunky-dory. It's fine. I'm doing fine. This is a phase. It's a fine. I'm fine. It's a phase. I'm fine. In my case, once people put a name to it and I saw what was happening, I was able to take it head on. But I often wonder if people had waited a bit longer to reach out, what that would have meant for me. And that makes me cry, because I know how dark it got, which is really shocking for the happy-go-lucky girl, right? This is why I cannot go back and edit this, because I'd edit a lot of this out. I love you guys with everything I have. You guys are an amazing community. You always rally around me and these episodes, and you're excited to go on this journey with me, and all I want in the world is to support you. If you are suddenly lost, if you are suddenly swept up in the undertow, if you wake up and you are in waist-deep water, which is essentially what happened to me, there's help. There's ways that you can beat this and get through it. At that time, I completely changed my life. Completely. Once I woke up, like I said, it's like waking up from a nap and realizing you're in waist-deep water. You're like, wait, I just woke up. How can I already be in this dire of a situation? I had the support of friends and family always. I knew that, but I did have the support of Brad. I was able to turn to him and say, hey, I am depressed. And he handled it calmly, told me he understood and we could get through it. I was lucky that that's what it took for me. I was able to manage things like, no, I am not going to come home and go right to sleep. I was able to change the things in my life that weren't working for me and were aiding in this situation. I do want to say, which is a hard thing to say, I still struggle with it. I still struggle with it. Out of nowhere, my brain will flip a switch and I will be at home, hanging out, doing my thing, and suddenly I'm like, I have to go to bed. And that's where I guess the old-timey phrase of the blues comes in. The blues will hit, and there I go. It's something that for my whole life I'll have to monitor and manage. I have told Brad about this a lot so that I have somebody else near me who can monitor and manage it. If he starts to see me sliding, he can help bring it to my attention. The main thing I wanted to get across in this episode is depression doesn't look like you think it does, but sleeping in, not caring about things I used to care about, there's some pretty classic signs there. I wasn't going to see them by myself. I never was. Never. Never, never. Who knows how far it would have gotten before I noticed by myself. what helped me more than anything, and what would have helped a lot sooner, was if somebody said, "What are you going through? What's going on?" a lot sooner. And that's all it really takes. Now, things wouldn't have magically fixed. Somebody wouldn't have said, "What are you going through, Kate?" And I would have been like, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'm depressed." Because obviously I couldn't put words to it. But the fact that so many people noticed a change in me and nobody said anything, I think that's the lesson there. And it's changed it for me for my whole life. Talk to people. Show up. Don't say, "How can I help you?" Show up and help. It's a hard thing to do, and sometimes you might get a door slammed in your face. I don't have all the answers. I'm going to link in the show description to people who know a lot more than I do on the subject, to people who can help in various cases. I just want you to know that it is possible to have your head underwater for months at a time, and you can still come out of it and take a breath. Just because your head has been underwater for so many months does not mean you have to drown there. All right, that's going to make me cry, so I think I need to stop there. I love you so much. Reach out to me, reach out to friends and family members. If you don't have somebody close to you, who will understand the words, "I think I need help," or "I think something's wrong," it's truly all it takes. If you don't have friends and family members who will understand that, I want you to know I understand it. I understand it. I understand the phrase, "I think something's wrong." And that's all it takes. I'll be there for you. Listen, this episode was supposed to be sponsored by my free course. I'm sitting here crying. I have a free Instagram course coming out on Sunday. If you are listening to this in real time, or at least before Sunday, head on over to thecwl.com/free uplevel. I'll put a link in the show description. I want you there to help you with your Instagram. This all feels horribly inappropriate after I cried. I can laugh now. I want you to note that. At that time, it got dark. At one point, it didn't look like I was making it out. And here I am, laughing and sharing my story with you. That's what I want you to know. Your friends and family can have that if you're worried about somebody. And you can have that if you're worried about yourself. And I know that feeling of kind of worrying about yourself. I love you. I am going to send this off into the world, the mess that it is. Because like I said, if I start editing, I might not stop editing. I love you. I'll see you over on the Instagram at Creative Women's League. And I'll see you in the Facebook group, Creative Women's League on Facebook. That is your community, and they understand you. I have never seen such a community. They embrace each other with open arms. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I can't stop saying it enough. I'm here for you. Don't hesitate to message me. All it takes is, "I think I need help." I think something's wrong. I don't know if I ever would have said, I think I need help. But I know I told somebody, I think something's wrong. Remember, this is not your fault, and it's okay that you have the world in your hands and still feel this way. I'm also going to link to Amy Porterfield's episode. She did an episode with Jasemine Star that inspired this episode. That's why our regular programming got pushed aside, because I felt they're right. It's incredibly, incredibly important. Thank you so much for listening today. You can breathe again. Okay? I promise you. You can breathe again. And the world will be wonderful on the other side. Not without its battles, not without its ups and downs, but still pretty freaking wonderful. You're still here? It's over. Go home.